Hello. So, continuing my videos on games that I own but have only played once. I last played this one back in 2015, Halloween night of 2015 actually. That was the only time I've played it. I don't remember, I guess I ordered this. I don't remember exactly how I acquired it. Anyway, not a lot to say about it. I remembered that I played it with my wife and daughter on Halloween, 5 years ago. But other than that, I don't remember a whole lot about it, or didn't until I, started reading the rules and actually played through a game yesterday. Although I'll say I didn't get very far and I lost. And from what I look at what I logged on BGG when we played it on Halloween night 5 years ago, we lost also. So, um, just a little spoiler on what I think of the game. It's hard, at least until you, I guess maybe if you learn more what you're doing, that might help you out. But playing it once every 5 years, I don't think you have a prayer of winning. But anyway, let's get on with the setup and how to play. Now, I will mention that the rule book that came with it has apparently been supplanted by this revised edition. Looking through this revised edition rules, looks pretty much the same. I think I noticed one or two changes. Maybe this thing has some more explanation of how things work, but I guess I'll be going by the revised edition rules. Now, if there's any other changes or something that has been done, then I'm not aware of that. And I'm just going to go by whatever rules are in this revised edition. And looks like these rules came out 7 years ago, so probably around the same time, or not long after the game came out with the original rules. Alright, first part of setup is to actually build the house that you're going to be playing in. So it's always made up of these four corner rooms. Now tiles are two-sided. This side with the fire is the destroyed side, and the side without fire is the regular side. So there's only four corners, and you can tell the corner rooms by this symbol right here. It looks kind of like a plus. So you have to use these four rooms, and you're going to be making a 4x5 grid with all the tiles. Okay, this entrance tile is always going to be used, and that's where your players, I'm going to play a 3-player game, that's where they will start. So I've got my four corner rooms, my entrance tile. Okay, then you have to choose and place your outer rooms. So you have this stack of tiles. You can tell the outer room tiles because they have this square icon. So that means they're going to go on the outer. So you have to choose 9 of these. And actually that's all there are, but you can choose the placement. And they have to be placed with the window with the sun shining in on the outside, so I guess that shows that's the outer wall. So go ahead and just make our outer walls here. So I'll just put that one there. Okay. I'll go ahead and finish just setting these up, and then I'll come back. Now I'm going to show an example of something you can't do and that I'll have to fix. So I was setting up my outer walls, and when I place this tile here, it kind of blocks this tile off where it can't be accessed, because this black line means this is a wall here, and this door would be blocked off by this wall here. So this tile cannot be placed here because it would block off this room with no access to it. So what I'll probably need to do is switch this out with another tile. Let's see if I switch out that one and this one. Let's see if we are Okay. Yeah. That should be good because this tile will be able to be accessed from an inner hallway. Okay. Then you fill the 6 inner tiles from this stack, and you can tell they're inner tiles because they have this solid square there. And there are actually, I think, 12 of these, and you only need 6, so you can kind of pick how you want to do that. But again, when you're placing these, you just have to make sure that you don't block off a room, make a room inaccessible. So I can put this one here. Now, even though this is a wall here, these other rooms are still accessible from other means. Let's see if I put that one there. Let me just finish this and I'll come back. Alright, I placed my 6 inner rooms, and I don't believe I have any room that is inaccessible in any way. If we run into that, then that's wrong, but I think I've got a good layout here, so that's the board setup. Okay, next, each of these tiles that has this icon gets a security camera token placed on it, and it has to be placed so that it sees it's facing a direction where it can see as many rooms as possible. Now, the way I've got this laid out, looks like this camera, the camera going this way. So here's a security camera token and the way it's going. So if I place it here, it's going to have line of sight all the way down this hallway to here. So that's the direction, because that's 3 tiles. That's more than it could see this way. Well, actually, that would be equal because it can see into this room. Well, no, there'll be a locked door there. So this direction is the way it needs to go. Now, I already have another one here where it would be looking down the same hallway. So I may want to move that. Should have been looking for that during my setup. So I think what I'll do is swap that tile. I just swapped these 2 tiles. So, alright, so I have a security camera that's looking down this hallway. Now I've got this one, and the direction it can see the most tiles, it'll be blocked by that wall, so that's only 1. This will be 2. It looks like for this camera it's going to be 2 tiles, or 1 tile no matter which way faces, because 1 tile here, then it's going to be blocked by a door. 1 tile here, it's going to be blocked by this door, and 1 tile here, and it'll be blocked by this door. So it's not going to matter which way we place it, so the players get to choose in that case. So I'm just going to make it face that direction. We have another one here, which if it's facing this way, it sees 2 tiles. But if it's facing this way, it sees 3 tiles. No, it'll be blocked by this wall. So 1 tile this way, 2 tiles this way. So it will face this way. Let's see if we have another one. I think that's it for cameras. Alright, next thing you do is remove the starting equipment cards, which are these blue backed ones, and then shuffle the equipment deck and just put it in a pile somewhere. Alright, then you'll just take these virus tokens, burn tokens, and fire markers and put them in a pile near the board. Then you'll take this cure token and put it on this laboratory tile. Okay, then you shuffle these zombie spawn tokens, and then you can put them in a stack or just put them in a pile. It says stack them near the board, but I like to just put them in a random pile like that. Then you take these creature boards and shuffle them and put them in a pile somewhere near the board. Okay, then we're going to set up the security board, and there's 3 modes of setting that up: dark, darker, and darkest. Dark is supposed to be the easy mode, but like I said, it wasn't very easy. But anyway, I'm going to set it up in dark mode, and I'll explain the rules for that. If you're interested in the darker and darkest mode, it just makes it a little more difficult, and I'm not going to go over the changes for that. Alright, so first thing it says to do is from your pile of code chips, draw 3 chips, 1 with 3 icons and 2 with 2 icons. So here's a 3 icon, here's a 2 icon, and here's a 2 icon. So now we get the code tokens that match these icons on this board. Actually, a lot of these are the same color. Let me kind of get a variety. Alright, well, that makes it look a little different. Anyway, so we find the matching code tokens out of these tokens that match these colors and put them on the board here. So we need a white with black square, a green plus, and that just looks like a solid black. Alright, so that's for those. Alright, a blue and a purple plus. Okay, that takes care of that one. And now a purple plus and a green. Okay, so I've got the 7 code tokens that match our 3 code chips. Alright, well, we have these 3 code chips. Now we need to count the number of these lock icons on our board and get the remainder of code chips we need, less the 3 that we're starting with. So we got 1, no more there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we need 7 code chips. We've got our 3 there, so we need to draw 4 additional. Okay, I've drawn 4 additional ones. Now you have to have any of the corner rooms that have a lock, those have to have a number 3 on them. So here's my original. And then you kind of supposed to mix them up so you don't know what's where. Then you have to put a 3 lock on all the corners, on all the corner rooms. So a 3 on that one, 3 on that one, 3 on that one. Looks like I need one more. I should have drawn one more 3 because I don't have enough. But alright, this one can be a 2. This one can be a 2. This one can be a 2. And I should have had another number 3 here, but I don't. So anyway, I'm just going to put a 2. But you're supposed to have a 3 on all the corner rooms. Alright, then each player will choose a survivor, their corresponding miniature, and their 7 cubes of their color. And I didn't really find it in the rules, but how you determine what color and what starting figure your player is, there's a separate little icon player aid. And so if you look at Leo Friedkin, if you grab that player board, it says he's a downtown firefighter, and it tells what his starting weapon is, so the fire axe. And it shows what his starting special ability. Leo can move into burning non-destroyed rooms. That's what that special ability icon means right there. You see, it shows it right there. And to determine what color you need, then you got to look at all the little figures. Well, and for Leo, he's a firefighter, so you find the figure with an axe, and that's him, so he's got to be purple. So then you take the purple cubes. So they don't really make it straightforward. You got to just kind of figure it out, but that's how you do it. So we've got Leo Friedkin, Jack Fulci, and Lucy Chang is what I'm playing with. There's another couple figures you can choose from. And these boards are double-sided. This one you start with 3 health, and on this side you start with 4 health. It says in a 2 or 3 player game you start with the side that has 4 health, so that's what I'm doing. So you put one marker, one of his cubes on his health, one on his experience. In a 3-4 player game you'll start with 4 actions. So the other 4 cubes there. The one remaining cube goes on this board here, up in this area. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then you also look at these possible future skills that each player can get on the bottom of their board and find the corresponding skill tokens that go with them, and just put them in a stack near that player's board. They're not in play at the beginning of the game. Alright, the starting weapon goes on the right side of the player board for each person. That's where your, I guess, gear cards go. They have a hand icon that shows you can have a maximum of 2 hand icons on the right side of your board. So if you had like a 2-handed weapon, that's all you could put on the right side of your board. But if you just have you can have up to 2 one-hand things on the right side of your board, and that counts as equipment. You can have a total of 5 equipment, so up to 2 hand equipment on your right side, and the rest as you get like consumable gear like extra ammo or health drinks or whatever, they go on the left side of your board, and you can have a total of 5. And the rules do state in a 2 to 4 player game you can have up to 5 equipment. In a 5 player game you can only have 4 equipment. And again, the number of action cubes you put up here is dependent upon your health. So as I said, in a 2 or 3 player game you play with the health of side 4. In a 4 or 5 player game you play the other side where you only have 3, so then you would only have 3 action cubes up here. So this is your energy track or health track as you take wounds from fighting zombies or creatures. You move this down. If you get down to 3 here, then you only get 3 action cubes each round, and so forth as you get lower. If you ever get down to here, you're dead. This is your skill or experience points as you kill zombies or creatures or unlock doors, that kind of thing. You gain experience, and then you can spend your experience points to upgrade to these other skills. So like it costs 4 experience points to upgrade to this skill, and if you do upgrade a skill, like if you upgraded this one, paid 7 experience, then you put that icon on there to show that you have it. And as I was showing earlier, you got to refer to this other little document, icon reference document, to see what each of those upgrades will get you. So like that one I just showed, Fire. Leo removes an extra burn token when spending APs to remove a burn marker. Again, as I mentioned, this is your starting skill, and this little hand icon with a 1 in it, that represents how many dice you roll when you are entrapped, which is something that can happen to you when you fight monsters, and we'll talk about that later. I'll just go over equipment card real quick. This little icon is your range. Obviously a fire axe has got a 0 range, but Like this handgun has a range of 1, so you can shoot up to 1 tile away within line of sight. This icon here is the number of dice you'll roll when you're using that weapon. And then this icon, of course, as I mentioned, that number of hands that gear takes up is what this icon is. And this icon here is used when you're trying to unlock these doors. And we'll get to that further in the explanation. And this one shows how much ammunition you start with, and you just use these black cubes to indicate your ammunition. So this handgun starts with 8, so you put 8 black cubes on it. Alright, finally this board is called the multi-tracker board. This section here shows which survivors are grouped together. At the beginning of the game, they all start in the start tile, so they all are grouped together and they all go in this leftmost box. If later they're separated, then if 2 were in one tile and 1 was in another, then they may be like that, and so they would be in separate boxes. And the order that your players are in these boxes is the order in which they can take their actions. Now, players in the same box can take their actions, one can do all of their actions and then the other one, or one can do some and then the other one can do some. But as soon as the players used all their actions, they slide it down. When everybody in this group is complete, then you'll have a little creature phase, and then the next group can start taking their actions. So that's what that indicates. So when you start the game, put everybody, since they're all in the starting tile, in the leftmost box. This is the event cycle section. You start the game in setup by putting a gray cube on this icon. And this is the darkness track, and in setup you start with a gray cube on the leftmost space of the darkness track. And that completes setup, and we're ready to start going over how do you play the game. Alright, the first thing we have is the upkeep phase. And the first thing you do to that, you can kind of follow the numbers on this board to determine what you need to do. So first thing in the upkeep phase is to move the event marker to the next event. Now this one kind of moves in a cycle, so it starts the game here, so the first time you move it, it goes to here. And when it's on that space, you do a zombie spawn. So when you're going to spawn zombies, you roll a 4-sided dice and a 6-sided dice. And the 4-sided dice will tell you what row to put it in, and the 6-sided dice will tell you which column to put it in. So you roll, and we got a 3-3. So you grab a random zombie token here. So 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So it would go in here, but that's a locked room from both doors, so you can't put it there. So what you do is put it in a non-burning tile that's adjacent to but within line of sight of one of the survivors. Well, all 3 of ours are in this tile right here. So the only ones adjacent and in line of sight are either this tile or this tile. And instead of just putting the token, since it's going to be in line of sight, you go ahead and reveal how many zombies it is. And that's very unlucky because that's 6 zombies. So you would just place them there like that. If the token had been placed maybe on like 1, 2 up here where it wouldn't have been in a single locked room, then you would just put the zombie token there, and then the players wouldn't know how many it is until it gets in line of sight of them, and then they have to reveal it. So like I said, if it was like how we rolled, if it's going to be in a single locked room, then you have to put it adjacent to at least one survivor and in line of sight and reveal it. The other times you have to do that is if one of these tiles is destroyed and it's flipped over to the fire side. If your zombie spawn roll would put it in that destroyed tile, then again you would just do what we did and put the zombies adjacent to a survivor and within line of sight. And if you rolled a 6 for your column roll, since there's only 5 columns, if you roll a 6, then you would do that same thing. Put it in adjacent to, but in line of sight of survivor, and then go ahead and reveal the number of zombies. When the event is on this space, then that means the fire spreads. So if there's a fire in the house, which can happen through one of the dice can start a fire, or when the darkness tracks gets to here, then you can start a fire. So if there is a fire, and when you move here on the event resolution, then that means the fire spreads. So we'll just say, for example, we had a fire here, so you have the fire token and a burn token. So if you get to this fire spread event, then what you do is roll the 4-sided die, and we got a 1. Then you consult here on the start tile. You see which direction a 1 will take you, so the fire will spread north. So you would move the fire token here and place a burn token. Now if ever there's 3 burn tokens in a tile, then it's destroyed and you flip it over. And the fire token can move through walls, through locked doors. The only place it won't move is through the laboratory door here. If, say, you were up here on this end tile and you rolled a 1 that said to move the fire north, obviously that goes off the board, so you would not do that. Instead, you would just put another burn token. Or if you rolled a 4 where it said it would move here into the laboratory, it can't move to the laboratory, so again you would just put another burn token. But otherwise it can move through any wall onto another. If it moves onto a tile that's already destroyed, you just don't add a burn token to it because that room is already destroyed. But the fire token would move there. Okay, if during the event resolution you move to this space, then that advances a marker on the darkness track. When the marker gets to this space, as I already said, then that will start a fire if there's not one already burning. If the marker gets to the 5th space, then that will start the final round. If the survivors don't get into the laboratory by the end of that 5th round, then they lose the game. Okay, so as I said, the first thing you do is move this. So at the beginning of the game, that would move it onto the zombie spawn, and we spawned 6 zombies here. Let me put them back. That just happened to be what turned out for us there. So the next part of the upkeep phase is the survivors regroup. Now, at the beginning of the game, all the survivors are in one tile, so they're all in this one box. But if later, after a couple turns, you got 2 survivors here and 1 survivors here, well, during the regroup phase, the survivors that are together have to be in one group, so that would be yellow and orange, and the survivor that's separate would be in another group. Now you can decide, as I mentioned during the setup, if you want purple to act first, then you would put him in that box and the yellow and orange in that box. If all the survivors were separated, then they would be each in a different box. And again, this is the order they're going to be able to take their actions. And so anyway, in the survivors regroup phase, you determine who's together, who's in what group, and then you determine what order you're going to want them to act in. and place the cubes in that order. And then this will act first, this will act second, this will act third. But if survivors are together in a room, then they have to be in the same group. And the rules don't actually specify this, but that's when I move my spent action point tokens back to the left box, because as you spend them, you'll move them over to the right box. So in that survivors regroup phase, I just move them over there. It doesn't really say it. I think it says at the beginning of the round, so you may want to do that at the very start of the upkeep phase. I just happened to do it at that point when I was playing. Okay, next, number 3 of the upkeep phase is the camera check. So if any survivors are in line of sight of a camera, so let's just say these two guys were here and this guy was here. Well, this camera has a line of sight. Camera always has a line of sight of the room it's in. Now, since this is blocked off by a wall, it can't see. This actually counts as a separate room on this tile, this little area. But this camera can see all of this area, all of this tile, all of this tile, and all of this tile. So when you're doing a camera check, if a camera can see into a room with survivors, then you have to roll a number of survivor dice equal to the number of survivors in that room. So since this camera could see into this room and there's 2 survivors, we would have to roll 2 dice. So the survivor dice are these white ones. And then you also have to roll this terror dice. And when you're making this camera check, if you roll a failure, which is this symbol here, then you have to activate whatever comes up on this terror dice. So we would roll like that. We didn't get a failure, so we don't have to do that. So that one's safe. Now you have to do that for each camera. So then if this camera saw somebody, we'd have to do a camera check for whoever it's seeing. And if this camera saw somebody, a survivor, not zombies, then you'd have to do another camera check. And if there happened to be a camera check which can see into the same location, like if this camera saw here, but if there was another one up here like we had at the beginning of the game, and it could see them also, then you'd have to do another camera check for that group. Okay, the next thing after the camera check in the upkeep phase is a zombie spawn. So in the phase where your event marker is on this zombie spawn, then you have to do another zombie spawn. So that's 2 zombie spawns in that upkeep phase. So that puts a lot of zombies. Now when it's down here, you would only have the 1, or when it's on this space, you only have the 1. But any round where the event marker moves to that zombie spawn, you always have another zombie spawn here. So that'll give you 2 zombie spawns. But anyway, it works the same way. You roll the 4 and 6-sided dice. I got a 36, so that would put, well, since we rolled a 6, it would put, you'd have to spawn zombies within line of sight of and adjacent to a survivor. So in this case, with the survivors like that, you could choose to put zombies here or here because they're in line of sight. Line of sight is never diagonal. Movement is never diagonal. It's always orthogonal. So you could put zombies here. That's pretty much about it. So anyway, step 4, you gotta spawn zombies again in the upkeep phase. And finally, step 5 is zombification. So we haven't really gotten to this yet, but when you're being attacked by zombies, if they roll a bite icon, then you'll get one of these virus tokens, and you have to put it, it takes up one of your inventory spaces. So during setup, I mentioned you had 5 inventory spaces. Now you can put this first one on the right side, or you can put it over on the left side, however you want to do, but that takes up 1 inventory space. So you get that when you get your first bite. If you ever get a second bite, then you get a second virus token, and that has to go on your left side. And again, that's taking up 2 of your inventory slots. And the reasoning behind that is that you're weakened from the virus, so you can't carry as much, that kind of thing. I think it said that somewhere in the manual. But once you have 2 virus tokens, then in this step, the zombification step, you have to start, you have to put a gray cube on this skill. If you had that skill, it's discarded and you no longer have it. Then every upkeep phase during the zombification, you move this to the left. And of course, it starts knocking out. If you have those skills, it starts getting rid of them. And again, all the way down. If it gets to this last one, then this survivor becomes a zombie. So you replace his miniature with a zombie miniature. You can come in the next round. You can come in like a new player. So discard down to just your starting equipment and reset everything back to the beginning. And you would start back on the start tile. And you can use your same character or come in as a new character. But that character becomes a zombie, so you replace his figure on the board with a zombie. And you have to advance the darkness track by 1. Now, one thing that can possibly help you if you are have 2 virus tokens, if you can get into the lab by doing the code, which we haven't talked about, you can use this space here to do an antidote and actually remove 1 of your virus tokens. You can only ever remove 1. You can't get rid of both of them. But if you remove 1, then of course that stops the zombification process wherever it was. You don't get to remove, like if you stopped it there by going and getting the antidote and going down to 1 virus token, you don't get to reset this. If you get bit again, then it will just pick up right where it left off. Okay, well that's the last step of the upkeep phase. Then we go into the action phase, which is where the players actually get to do something. So in the actions phase, the players, as I said, get to take their actions in group order, starting with the leftmost group, which at the beginning of the game is all 3 players. And again, you can have players do all 4 of their actions, and then the next player do all 4, or maybe one player will do 2 actions, then another player will do an action. You can take them in whatever order you want until you're out of actions, and then once your character's out of actions, you just move its marker down. So, what actions can you take? Okay, so one action survivors can take is to move. So, say Jack here, he wanted to spend 1 point, move it over there to the right, so he knows he has 3 left, and he can move to an adjacent. You can't move diagonal, you can only move orthogonally. So he can move here, or he could move here. Now he couldn't move into this room because that's a wall. To get into this room, he would have to have unlocked this door, and then moving down into that room is actually another move. But if you're here, you could spend 1 to move there, then he could spend another to move there. Now, if you ever have a line of sight to a zombie token, so say if there was a zombie token here, and he moved here, well then he immediately has line of sight because it's not blocked by a wall or a locked door. Then you immediately flip that token over and replace it with the number of zombies. This is that, there's not that many 6s, this is that same one I was using earlier, but so as soon as you got line of sight to a zombie spawn token, you have to turn it over and replace the token with actual zombies. Now the active group that's acting, which is always the first one on the left here, they can all move together if they want, and they each just spend 1 token, 1 action point, and then they all can move together. Okay, another action you can do is search. So a survivor can spend 1 action point to search a room that is not a destroyed room. So anytime you search a room, you roll a number of survivor dice equal to the number of survivors in that room. So in this case, if Jack here decided for one of his actions he was going to search, well, he could actually roll 3 survivor dice. If there's only one person in there, you just roll 1 dice. If you're rolling more than 1 dice, for instance, in this case, if he was searching and he was rolling 3 dice, well, you also have to roll the terror dice. And for each success you get, then you get to draw 1 equipment card. But you can only keep 1. So if I had rolled 2 successes, then I would draw 2 equipment cards. But I could only keep 1, but I could pass at no cost the other equipment card to somebody in the room with me. So in the case where I had 3 here, 3 people in the room, and I rolled 3 survivor dice, if I got 2 successes, then I could draw an equipment card, and I could keep that. That's another handgun. I've already got one, so I may want to pass that over to Leo, and he could take that and put it in his hand, or he could take this and move it over to the left side and just keep that. Anyway, then I could draw another one, and so forth. So you up to the number of successes, that's how many cards you draw. But here's the rub. With rolling more dice, if you roll other than successes, if you roll 2 of anything else, 2 failures, 2 retreat, then you have to also do whatever came up on the terror die. So like this one's a zombie spawn. There's other things, and we'll talk about that later. But if you roll 2 of anything but successes, then 2 or more of anything but successes, then you have to do what is on the terror die. So you have a better chance of finding something and getting successes with more people, but you also have the additional risk of rolling 2 of something and activating that terror die. Okay, I mentioned if you got 2 successes on a search roll. Oh, one thing I forgot to say on the search roll. After you've had a successful search in a room, you have to put a gray cube in that room, and then that room can no longer be searched in the future. You found everything there is in there. All right, and as I mentioned, when you're searching, if you have more than 1 success, you can take an item and pass an item at no cost to somebody else in the room with you. Well, that's the only time you can pass something at no cost. If you're not doing a search, but you want to give or take something from somebody else in your room, you can do that, but at the cost of 1 action point. So for 1 action point, you can pass something to another player in the room, or from 1 action point, you can take something from another player in the room. All right, another thing you can do on your turn is unlock a door. So we haven't talked about this yet, but whenever you're in a room adjacent to a door, like we are at the beginning here, you can go ahead and flip that token over. And you can see to unlock this, you need both of these symbols. So those symbols can be found on items you have. So for instance, this handgun that I start with has this blue symbol. Well, that doesn't help me to unlock this door. So you kind of need to search to get items, because all items, like this one here, see, it's got that white with the black dot in it. So items will have symbols on them, and if you have the required symbols that are required on the key code on the door in your inventory, then you can unlock that door. Now, you don't lose the equipment that you have, but when you unlock a door. But if you have the symbols on your equipment that can unlock the door, you spend 1 action point, and then you take that key code chip and just put it next to your player board. That doesn't take up an inventory spot. But then now this door is unlocked and survivors can move in there. Now, if you don't have all the required symbols, say you just had one of them on your card, but somebody else from your active group, now remember that's the group that you're playing in, if somebody else is in there that's in a different group, they can't contribute. But if somebody that's in your active group is in the room with you and they have the symbols on their equipment cards that can help you unlock the door, then they can spend 1 action point to contribute their symbols, and then you can unlock the door. Now, one other way you can do it is just force the lock, but for every symbol that you don't have, that you force on the lock, you have to move the darkness marker 1 space on the right. So if I had, the green plus symbol, but I didn't have that purple symbol, I could just force it, spend the 1 action point to force it and open it. But since I had to force 1 symbol, I would have to move the darkness track 1 space to the right. Okay, another action you can take is you can spend 2 action points to remove 1 burn marker from a room. Now, whenever the last burn marker in the house is removed, then you can go ahead and extinguish the fire and pick up the fire token. But if there's still a burn marker somewhere else in the house, you don't get to extinguish the fire. One other point I forgot to mention when unlocking a door: each time a door is unlocked, all survivors gain an experience point. Not just the ones that were involved in unlocking the door, but all survivors playing. Now back to talking about the fire a little bit. Each burn marker in a tile does 1 point of damage. So if a survivor moves into a room that has 2 burn markers, they immediately have to take 2 points of damage. Or if they're in a room and the fire spreads there, that immediately places a burn marker, they have to take a point of damage. Now, once the tile has got its 3rd burn token and you flip it over to its destroyed side, again, a survivor that is in there when that happens takes 3 points of damage. Or you can move into a destroyed tile, but you take 3 points of damage if you do so. But the same thing happens to zombies. If a zombie is in a tile that has a burn marker, they take 1 point of damage, which kills them. So if you had 2 zombies, well, here, and the fire spread, and you put a burn marker in there, that would kill one of the zombies. Creatures that aren't fire resistant are also affected by fire and take damage by fire. Okay, another action you can do on your turn, if you've unlocked one of these corner rooms, each of these corner rooms has 2 possible functions. So if you've unlocked and got in there, you can use its special ability. Okay, this special ability is the ammo reserve. So a survivor enters this room, for 2 action points they can refill the ammo of one of their weapons up to its full capacity. This room is the medical supplies. If they use this symbol, for 2 action points, they can heal up to 2 of their wounds. So, if they're wounded, they could heal 2 and move their marker back up. Okay, a survivor that enters this room can use this ability for the sprinkler control, and if they do that, they can extinguish all burn markers on 1 tile for 2 action points. And the special ability in this laboratory tile is the antidote. For 2 action points, a survivor can remove one of their virus tokens, which we talked about earlier. Now, one thing to be said is these actions, these special actions, can only be taken once per round. So if one survivor goes in there and uses it, another survivor can't go in there and use it that round. And to mark that it's been used, you're supposed to put a black cube on it, and then in the upkeep phase, at the beginning of the upkeep phase of the next round, you remove that to show that that ability is available again. Alright, another space you can use in these corner rooms. They each have their one unique ability, but all of them but the laboratory have this terminal ability. And again, that is can only be used once per round. Now you could use one in this room and one in this room by a different player in the same round, but each terminal in each room can only be used once per round. Now the purpose of the terminal is to unlock the laboratory. So as we talked about, when you unlock the doors, you keep these tokens. And when you go to use the terminal, again for 2 action points, you can take one of those tokens that you have and place it on one of the 3 slots of the security board. And when you place a token, you can remove the matching token chip. So if I placed this token here, I could remove a purple and a green. Now, once you've placed a token there, you can never remove it, and you only can place 3 onto the security board in total. So what you're wanting to do is find the tokens on the locks that are going to unlock, every one of these codes. You remember at the beginning of the game, we took 3 of these, which we don't know where they are, that created this code. So the most efficient way would be to find those 3, enter them on the board, and you'll remove all those code tokens. And once all those code tokens are removed, then the laboratory is open and you're able to move in there and grab the antidote, which remember you have to do before the end of round 5. Now, there's one other way you can remove those code tokens when you use the terminal. You can remove 1 code token of your choice without entering a code chip, but you have to advance the darkness marker 1 spot. So it's better to find the right locks and use them to unlock the door. But if you happen to not get everything because you didn't use the most efficient combination and you need to, you've put 3 on there, you can't remove them, and you still have 1 or 2 code tokens on there, you can do that by using the terminal, and you can remove 1, but again that will advance the darkness track. So the last action that we haven't talked about is the combat or attack action. So, depending on what equipment you have, for instance, Jack here, who I've been using in my example, has a range of 1. So he can shoot in the same room he's in or into an adjacent room where he has line of sight. So he could take 1 action to fire his handgun. So he would remove 1 ammo, and then he gets to roll 3 survivor dice. and failures will cancel one other dice. But if you get two failures, like in this case, you could use this failure to cancel this failure. This one is a retreat, which would allow you to move to an adjacent room. Now, if you're in a room with zombies, you cannot normally move out of that room. So if you start your action phase in a room with zombies, you can't spend an action to move out of that room. The only way you can move out of that room is to kill all the zombies in there, or if you're attacking them and you roll a retreat result, then that would allow you to retreat to an adjacent room that you can get into. But that was a terrible roll. But say I'd spent my 1 ammo and I rolled 1 success. Well, then I can kill 1 zombie. And for every zombie you kill, you get an experience point. And remember, I said those can be spent to get these upgraded skills. If I rolled 2 successes, I could kill 2 zombies. The other possibilities on here are the aim icon, and that lets you extend your range by 1 for each aim icon you get. So if this door was open and there was a zombie in there, and so if I had this configuration where I had a zombie in here, this door was already unlocked and I had a zombie in here, and I rolled this, well, normally my range is only 1, so I would be able to kill this zombie with the 1 success. But I could apply this ranged icon to this other success, extending my range by 1 and allowing me to kill this zombie. So that's how combat works. Old Lucy has the baseball bat to begin with. She gets to roll 3 dice, but she has to be in the same room. Leo, he has to be in the same room. His range is 0, and he only gets to roll 2 dice. And this icon on the fire axe means you can spend 1 action point to remove a burn token, where normally it costs 2. Oh, one other icon I didn't mention is this. This is the knockback. So if you're in the same room with a zombie and you roll the knockback, then you can knock them into an adjacent room. If you rolled 2 knockbacks, you could apply 1 to each, one of 2 different zombies, or you could knock 1 zombie back 2 spaces if it were open. So like if this door was locked and I rolled 2 knockbacks, I could only knock him back 1 space. But if it was open and I rolled 2 knockbacks, I could knock 1 zombie back 2 spaces. So those are all the actions you can take. Once you've taken all your actions, once all the survivors in a group have taken all their actions, then you have the zombie and creature reaction phase. So that happens if I had 1 survivor in another group. Once these 2 have finished all their actions, then you have a zombie and creature reaction phase. Then this player would get to take their actions, and then you'd have another zombie and creature reaction phase. Okay, the next thing to talk about is the zombie and creature reaction phase, which is depicted by these icons. So after all the members of a group have completed all their actions, then there is a zombie and creature reaction phase. So what that does is the first thing that happens is if there's any zombies in the room with a survivor that just finished. So what that does is any zombies in the same room as one of the survivors that just finish activating, they'll go ahead and attack. But what it also does is for each member of the group that just finished their actions, it creates a zone of the adjacent tiles around them. So if this whole group had stayed together and they finished their actions, then any of these adjacent tiles would be triggered, and any zombies or zombie tokens in those in one of those adjacent tiles would attempt to move into the room with the closest survivor in that trigger zone and then attack them. So first, any in the same room with one of the survivors that just finished their actions will attack, and then any in that trigger zone will try to move to the closest survivor in that trigger zone and attack them. Now, the zombies or spawn tokens can move up to 2 spaces, and of course they can't move through walls or anything like that. So let's talk about how the zombies attack. So we'll say this group finished, they all stayed together, there's 2 zombies in there, so the first thing that happens is the zombies in that room will attack. So the zombies will roll a number of dice equal to the number of zombies in the room, up to a total of 6. So in this case there's 2, so they would get to roll 2 of their attack dice. And then for each survivor that's in the room there, they get to roll one of their survivor dice as a defense. So we have 3 survivors in there, they would get to roll 3 dice. And for each success that they roll, they get to cancel one of those dice. So in this case, they rolled 1 success, they would get to cancel one of these, but the other one would take effect. So let's talk about what all the effects are. Well, the first one is a bite, which we've kind of already talked about. If you have to assign a bite to one of the survivors, then they get one of these virus tokens, and then if you get 2 virus tokens, then you start taking the zombification process. This hand icon is an entrap, so if you have to assign one of these entrap icons to one of the survivors that's being attacked, you take an entrapment token, which is one of these, and you place it under whatever survivor you're assigning it to. When you roll these zombie combat dice, you can assign the results to any survivors in the room where the zombies are attacking. You get to choose which survivor, but you can't assign, if somebody already has is entrapped, then you can't assign another entrapment result to them. You have to assign it to a different survivor. And when survivor is entrapped, it means they cannot leave the room they're in unless all the zombies are killed or they're able to free themselves. And the only action they can take is to try to free themselves. So, we talked before about normally you can't move out of a room with zombies in it, but you can attack and do other actions. But when you're entrapped, the only action you can do is to try to free yourself. And to free yourself, well, first of all, on your turn when you're entrapped, you can only spend 1 action point, and that action point is spent to try to free yourself. And you'll roll a number of survivor dice equal to your entrapment rate, which is 1. For all of these survivors, their entrapment shows a 1, so you would get to roll 1 survivor dice. And if you get a retreat result, then you're free from entrapment. Otherwise, you remain entrapped. Now, other survivors in the room can assist in trying to free you, and they can spend an action point to roll a dice also. So in this case, this guy that's entrapped, he only has 1 action point. He's got to spend it to try to free himself. but his other friends that are in the same room that are not entrapped, they could spend an action point each to allow two more dice to be rolled, and hopefully one would come up. Well, in this case, none of them come up with the retreat icon, so you would remain entrapped. Now, if all three or all members of the survivors ever become entrapped, then the survivors automatically lose the game. I think I read that in a fact somewhere. Okay, some other results are this one, which is heavy damage. If you take that, if you assign that to a survivor, they got to move their damage marker down 2. There's also just a regular damage. I'm trying that one. If you get that, you just got to move it down 1. And remember, as the damage goes down, if you get to the 3, then at the beginning of round you only get 3 action points. When it gets down to 2, you only get 2 action points. And if it gets here, then you're killed. Alright, the other results are the reinforcement. And what the reinforcement does is if there are zombies in tiles that are 2 tiles away, then, and if they can reach the room within 2 moves, then they will move into the room. But they won't attack, but they will move into the room on that round, but not attack when they move in there. But they have to be 2 tiles away and have to be able to reach the room within where the combat is taking place within 2 moves. And the last result is the fear, which will cause a survivor to move to an adjacent room, not diagonal, that's not blocked by walls or anything. So they would move to an adjacent room if possible. Now, any entrapped results, if you're entrapped, you can't be moved by the fear. So if in the same roll you rolled a fear and an entrap, you have to assign the entrap result first, and then if there's another survivor that can have the fear assigned to him, then you'll do that. But you always have to assign the entrapped result first. So that's all the possible zombie combinations. So again, in the zombie and creature reaction phase, any zombie or creatures that are in a room with a survivor in the group that just finished activating, they will attack them. And then any survivors, any zombies or creatures that are in the triggered zone in adjacent tiles will attempt to move in. If they move in, they'll attack. If they can move and be closer, then they'll do that. Even if they can't reach the tile, if they can move and be closer, they will do that. Now, they will never move. So if a zombie was triggered here, because he's in the, if the triggering zone is here, because all the survivors are there, so it's all the adjacent tiles. If this zombie was triggered and he was blocked here and blocked here, he would never move outside the triggered zone. They always have to move within the triggered zone. And if they can move closer, they will. And if they can move in, they'll move in and attack. And zombies will never move into a burning room or destroyed room. So if there was a burning token here, the zombie would not move in there, obviously, because it would destroy him. So a zombie will never move into a burning or destroyed tile. Now, a creature might if it has fire resistance. And we haven't talked about creatures, but we'll do that here shortly. Now, there may be multiple triggered zones. If all these survivors were in this group and one of them happened to have moved over here during his turn and these two were here, well, because they all started in the same group at the beginning, then even though they've finished their actions and they're in different rooms, they're still all part of the same group at this time. So you would have several trigger zones. You would have these two survivors in here, so you would have all these adjacent tiles that would be possible trigger any zombie tokens or zombies. But then because this survivor's here, he would create another trigger zone of these adjacent tiles, so any zombies here or here would also be activated and try to move to the closest survivor. So you could have multiple trigger zones. Now, of course, at the beginning of the next round, because these guys are in separate rooms, in the beginning of the next round, when you do the regroup phase, then you would have yellow and orange in one group and purple would be in another group. But since they started in this group and ended up that way, you would have two trigger zones. And if somebody moved somewhere else, well, you would have three possible trigger zones. And then finally, you see also that the fire spreads. After the zombie and creature's reaction phase, then the fire spreads. So if there's a fire in the house, then you would roll the four-sided dice and the fire would spread, according to whatever result that you got, as we talked about. And after that, then you go ahead and begin the next round, starting with the event phase, or starting with the upkeep and the event phase, where you'll move the event token down in the cycle. So we need to talk about creatures, since zombies and creatures attack and move in the zombie and creature reaction phase. But before we do that, we should probably talk about this terror die, which you've seen. It gets rolled when you're doing searches and when you're doing the camera check. And we'll talk about what the results of this are. So first is this zombie horde appears icon. If you have to activate what's on the trigger, the terror die, and this is the icon, then a zombie horde appears in a room that is orthogonally or diagonally adjacent to the person that triggered that, person or team that triggered that terror roll. So it can't appear in a locked room, but if you rolled this and you were in here, then the token could be placed here or here. Now if you place it in line of sight, then obviously you flip it over and spawn the number of zombies. If it's not in line of sight, then it just stays the token. But those zombie tokens move, like in the creature, zombie and creature reaction phase, they move just like zombies would, and if they get in line of sight, then they're revealed and you spawn the number of zombies. So if you roll this symbol, then that's when you will, if there's not a creature on the board, then you'll spawn a creature. So to spawn a creature, you'll roll a location roll, just like, with the 4 and 6-sided dice, just like you would for a zombie or whatever, and get the location. And then you'll have shuffled earlier at the beginning of the game, you'll shuffle these creature boards and you'll draw the top creature. So in this case, we got the zombie dog. So you would find the zombie dog miniature and place it in the location that you rolled. Now it can't be placed in a locked room, so if you roll a locked room, then it just says re-roll until you find a location where it can be placed. Now this creature right here is fire resistant, so he's not affected by burning or destroyed rooms. But when a creature moves or attacks, it's a little different than the zombies. So a creature is a lot harder to kill than a zombie. The creatures have these target areas on them, and they show how many hits each target area needs to take it out. Now when you apply a hit to a target area, I'm trying to get a cube, you put a gray cube on it. So if you're fighting this creature and you get a success, And you can say, I'm going to target the orange target area, and you put a gray cube on it. If you get a second hit on that orange target area, well, then that section is destroyed. And for the orange, what that does is it'll negate one bite result that's rolled by the creature. So you'll see this creature gets to roll 3 creature attack dice. Well, if you've destroyed the orange area, then one of his bite icons or bite results on a dice is negated if you've destroyed that section. The blue sections go to his mobility, so if you destroy one blue section, he loses 1 movement point because this is his movement point. If you destroy another blue section, then he loses another movement point. And the white section, if you destroy that, then he can't use his special attack. So normally when he's attacking, if he rolls that reinforcement icon, the lightning bolt, he gets to do his special attack, which is shown down here. And to see what that is, you have to, again, look at this icon reference guide, which is kind of a pet peeve of mine. But you'll see for the zombie dog, that special attack is he gets to remove or have a survivor discard 1 equipment card. But otherwise, all his other dice results are the same as we described earlier for zombies attacking. So you have to destroy all these target zones to actually kill this creature. And once he's killed, then all survivors get 2 experience points. And that works for the same for the other creatures. But in the zombie and creature reaction phase, where we talked about the trigger zone for zombies, that does not matter for the creatures. The creature will just move up to its movement allowance towards the nearest survivor in the zombie and creature reaction phase, even if it is not in the triggered zone. Now, if it's already in a room with a survivor somewhere, then it will just attack them. And you can only ever have 1 creature in the house at a time, so if you roll the terror dice and you have to activate the creature icon and there's already a creature in the house, it doesn't spawn another creature, but you must remove 3 hit cubes from the creature's target areas, and the survivors get to choose which 3 are removed. So if you roll the kind of the zombie and creature attack icon on the tear dice and have to activate it, then it works sort of like the regular standard zombie and creature attack we talked about, with the trigger zone being wherever the person that rolled that and is activating that. But if there's a creature, then he will use his full movement to try to move closer to where the person that triggered this is and attack them. If there's no creature on the board, then not only is the room where the survivor is that rolled this tear die a trigger zone, then also each adjacent tile to him becomes a trigger zone. So in this case, this tile would be a trigger zone, so anything in those would attempt to move closer to the survivors. This one would be a trigger zone. So it almost activates the whole board, and any zombies that are in those tiles would attempt to move. They could move up to 2 spaces and move closer toward the survivor that triggered that. If you roll the fire icon on the terror dice, then if there already exists a fire, then you just spread it how we talked about, roll the d4 and it spreads in that direction. If there's not a fire on the board, then you roll for a location just like with zombies, and place a fire token and a burn token on that location, and then you have a fire in the house. And I think that covers everything on the tear die, and that pretty much covers creature, zombie and creature reaction phase. Then you would go back to the upkeep phase, and so it goes. So how do you win the game? We've talked about by the end of the 5th round, you have to have gotten the code tokens, entered them into the security board, and unlocked the laboratory so a survivor can get that antidote token and place it under them. So what happens once the survivors enter the laboratory? It immediately triggers the final showdown. So the survivor that entered the laboratory takes the antidote token, and if they are killed, then the survivors immediately lose. If they're killed at any time before the survivors are able to win, then the survivors will lose. So as soon as the survivor gets that antidote token, then the house goes into lockdown. So all the cameras tokens are taken off. They don't matter anymore. All the doors unlock. So you remove all the code chip lock tokens from any doors you hadn't already unlocked. Any zombie tokens that are on the board, you immediately flip over and convert into hordes and put zombies on the board where the tokens are. If there's not already a fire in the house, then you'll immediately make a location roll and start a fire in the house in that location. You will then randomly take one of the 2 Nemesis boards and flip it over, and that becomes the Nemesis, and they appear in the lab. That's like they were hiding in the lab. So you take their figure and put it on the lab. Then you'll sum up all the action point totals that each character has. So if they each still have 4, then for a 3-player game that would be 12. And then another one for each survivor still in the game. So if you had, in this case, if I still had all 3 of my survivors, that would be 3 more. So a total of 15 gray cubes that you would allocate as evenly as you can to each of these target locations on the Nemesis board. Okay, then you flip this multi-tracker board, and you place a gray cube on the bottom of the event cycle and a gray cube on the leftmost spot of the darkness track. So once the final showdown begins, the survivors, for them to win the game, they have to attack the Nemesis, which in this case would be Dr. Mortimer. The only other one in the base game is Lisa Mortimer. But they have to remove all these cubes from him before he is able to destroy the other 3 corner rooms. So that's his goal, is he's going to run around and try to destroy these rooms. In the meantime, the survivors are trying to attack him. So the way the whole thing works is you'll take your action cubes, whatever, if you're wounded, then you might only have, at this time, you might only have 3 action cubes. But we'll just say, because we set up the 15 cubes on his board based on the fact that each player still had 4 action points. So each player will take his action cubes into his hand. Oops. And the players can now take their actions in any order they want, but anytime a player takes an action, he puts his action point in this leftmost box. So say Lisa or Lucy took an action, then this guy Jack takes an action, then Leo takes an action, then maybe Leo takes another action. Anyway, as soon as the sixth cube is placed in this box from the sixth action having taken place, these cubes will then slide over into this middle box. And that will trigger the reaction phase. So the first thing you'll do is move this marker up to the top. When it's on that blue icon, nothing happens. So that's good for the first round. But then come down here and the fire will spread. So you'll roll the D4 to see which way the fire spreads. Then you'll have zombification for anybody that's got two virus tokens. The zombification will take effect and they'll have to move their marker to the left. And then finally you have the zombie and creature reaction phase, which is different now. So the first thing that'll happen during the reaction phase is the nemesis will try to move to the closest corner room. Now his movement, this guy's movement is 3. Of course, if you manage to destroy some of these blue target zones, that will lower it. But at the beginning it's 3. So he will try to move to the closest corner room, moving up to total of his movement. If he enters a tile with a survivor or group of survivors, he'll attack once, rolling his attack dice and applying the results just like we did with creatures. But he'll attack once and then he'll continue his movement, up to his 3 movement points. Then after the nemesis finishes his reaction, then zombies and creatures will attack. But there's no trigger zone, so the whole board is a trigger zone. So first, any zombies in a room with the survivor will attack. Then any remaining zombies that were not in a room with the survivor will move up to 2 rooms and try to attack. And then the creature will also move up to its movement point towards the nearest survivor or attack a survivor in its room. And then once that happens, it goes back to the players will still have some cubes remaining in their hand. Those cubes remain there, so they continue to place, whatever cubes. Then they take actions again, placing cubes until they get 6 again in there. And then once another 6 is in there, then these will move to the right and the players will get those action cubes back that they can use on their next turn. But then these will move to the middle, triggering the reaction phase again, moving the event marker down, which will move the darkness marker. Of course, then the fire spreads, then zombification, and then again the reaction phase starting with the nemesis. Now, if the nemesis does move into a corner room, then you would immediately flip it to its destroyed side, and any survivors in that room would take 3 damage. Any non-fire resistant creature in that room would take 3 damage, and all zombies in that room would be destroyed. Well, I actually did that wrong a little bit. When he first enters the room, a corner room, then he just ends his movement and that's all he'll do. Of course, he would attack if there was a survivor in there, but then during the next reaction phase, then he would destroy the tile, and like we just said, damage would be taken by survivors, creatures, and zombies would be destroyed. And so that's what keeps happening. Then the players would play action points again, continuing to rotate. If the darkness marker ever reaches the 6, then the survivors lose. If the nemesis manages to destroy all 3 of the other corner tiles before the survivors have managed to take all the do enough damage to remove all the gray cubes, then the survivors lose. So the only way for the survivors to win is to manage to attack the nemesis enough to remove all the action cubes. Now there are some changes I didn't mention. And when you're in this final showdown phase, when the survivors take a move action, they can move 2 tiles instead of 1. And there's some other differences during the final showdown. Besides, the survivors can move 2 spaces instead of 1. There's no searching. The survivors can't search rooms. If a survivor is killed or eliminated in any way, they cannot come back at the beginning of the next round like they can during the normal gameplay. Survivors cannot remove burn markers. Now, in the normal game, when a tile gets 3 burn markers and it's flipped over and it's destroyed, that advances the darkness track. When you're in the final showdown, when a tile is destroyed, that does not advance the darkness track. And the corner room special abilities can still be used for these 2 tiles, but the sprinkler special ability cannot be used. But other than that, the other rules remain the same. So that's it. I know this has been a long video. I do just want to go over a couple of other things. Let me flip this back to its normal side. I want to go over again what causes the darkness track to advance. Obviously, when the event marker lands on here, that causes it to advance. When a survivor is killed, that causes it to advance, but not in the final showdown. Just like when a tile is destroyed by fire, that normally causes it to advance, but again, not in the final showdown. And then also when you force an icon on a lock because you don't have the icon on your cards, for each icon you do that with, it causes it to advance. And the same when you're removing icons from the security board. Anytime you force one of those, that causes it to advance. Alright, normally I go through several turn examples, but because this video's been so long already, I'm maybe just going to go through 1 or 2 quick turn examples. So again, first thing at the beginning of the game is the event resolution. So first you'll move the event token up here, which will cause a zombie spawn. So we'll roll, and we got 2, 3. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So we will put a zombie, we draw a random zombie token and put it in here. It's not in line of sight of our survivors because they're blocked by this locked doors here. So it just stays there. Okay, next would be survivors regroup, but at the beginning of the game we're all in the same room, so we just stay in the first group. Okay, next is camera check. This camera is pointing this way, so it does not see these survivors. This camera is pointing this way, and this one is pointing down here. So no camera sees any survivors, so there's no check to be made. Now we do actually have another zombie spawn. And we got 3, 2. So we draw a token, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, it goes here, and that is not in line of sight of our survivors, so again, it does not flip over. Next would be zombification, but nobody's been bitten, so we don't have to worry about that. So now we go into the actions phase. We're all in the same group, so any of these survivors can take their actions, so you just discuss among yourself. Who wants to go do what? So we'll just say Leo wants to search for his action. Since there's 3 survivors in there, we roll 3 dice and the terror dice. And we got 1 success, but because we did get 2 of another icon, we're going to have to spawn a creature. But first we'll do our success, so Leo gets to draw an equipment, and he got a first aid kit which can be used 1 time, It allows him to heal, and it contributes that purple icon. He puts that on the left side of his player board. Alright, now we got to do a location roll to see where our creature is going to spawn. And we got 4, 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. He's going to spawn right here. So we see which one we got, which is the zombie dog. So we got to, let me find his miniature. Okay, here's the zombie dog miniature, and he's pretty dang close to the survivors. Okay, and we also have to place a gray cube in there because we successfully searched that room. It can't be searched again. Alright, so Jack, he's got a weapon that's capable of firing into the next room, so he's gonna, well actually, his special ability here, Jack can attack once per round without spending an AP. So he's going to take a free attack. So he's going to spend ammunition. He gets to roll 3 dice. Got 1 success, 1 failure, so we have to assign this. So we'll cancel out this retreat with this failure, but he gets 1 success. So he gets to put a damage on the zombie dog, so we'll put it on his bite. Okay, and then he's going to take another attack action and attack again. And so that cancels out. So we could do a knockback, but I don't want to. Well, he couldn't knock him back into the wall anyway, so that's failure. Oh, but we did have to use another ammunition. Alright, let's attack again. We got to do as much damage as we can to this thing. Well, again, knockbacks, those aren't helping me. So attack again. Use another ammunition. 2 successes, but 1's canceled. So we do get 1 success, so we will put another hit. And now if he rolls a bite when he attacks, we negate 1 of them. And we still have 1 more action, so we'll attack 1 more time. We've got to take 1 more bullet. 2 successes, great. So we'll put that on his special ability. Alright, well Leo still has 3 actions and Lucy still has 4 actions. So Lucy's going to spend 1 action and she's going to move in here with this dog. And then she's going to spend an action to swing her bat. She gets 3 rolls. So that doesn't help at all. I mean, she could retreat back if she wanted to, but she's going to take another action to swing that bat again at that dog. That failure will cancel out that failure, so she does get 1 success. So we'll apply that to this blue token. And she's got 1 more action, but I don't want her to be separated. Well, yeah, alright, let's swing that bat again. 1 last time with her last action. Alright, we can have that failure cancel out that retreat, so she gets 1 success. And we'll apply that other one to that zombie dog. So now he's lost 1 movement point. He's down to 2 movement point. And 1 of his bite icons will be nullified, and 1 of his special attack rolls will be nullified. And we only need 2 more hits on him to kill him. So Leo still has his 3 actions. Now his axe, he only gets 2 rolls. And we've got these zombies that are probably going to come after us. But let's go ahead. We'll spend 1 action to move Leo into this room. And then he will spend another action to attack with his fire axe that dog, he only gets to roll 2 dice. 2 successes, fantastic. Those 2 successes would go there, which is going to eliminate this creature. And because we eliminated a creature, everybody gets 2 experience points. Now Leo has 1 action left, so he's going to use that to search. There's 2 survivors in there, so we'll roll 2 dice, which means we're going to have to roll the tear dice and hope we don't get doubles. Alright, we got 1 success, so Leo gets to draw an equipment card. Got a flashbang, which you can use that to remove an entrapment, and he will keep that also. So he's got 3 of his 5 equipment slots filled. Now, because we are in this room, we can go ahead and flip this and see what we need to unlock that. We need a green and a white, which none of our survivors have at this time. But that's his last action. He moves his icon down here, so our active group is finished. So now we got to do the creature and zombie reaction phase. Now we've got 2 trigger zones because everybody in this first group, they're in separate. So this guy forms a trigger zone of all of these areas, and we've only got 1 zombie token here. And these guys form a trigger zone of these areas, which is still going to affect this same zombie. So I guess we decide which way it goes first. I don't think it's really going to matter. We'll have these guys activate their trigger zone first. And actually, because they're in this tile, that kind of counts as them being here too. So they have line of sight. So this should have gone ahead and been flipped over already. So that's a 4. And when you reveal these, they just go out of the game. But we need to put 4 zombies in there. Okay, but now because we're triggering that, these zombies can move up to 2 spaces, so they'll all move in here, and they're going to attack. So they're going to roll 4 dice, because there's 4 of them. And then because we have 2 survivors in there, we get 2 defense dice. No successes, so that doesn't block any of them. So we have to allocate these among the survivors in that room. So one of them is going to have to get 2 damage. We'll apply that to Leo. One of them is going to have to get 1 damage. We'll apply that to Lucy. One of them is going to have to get a bite, which remember is a virus token. So we'll give that to Lucy. Because remember, that takes an equipment slot, and he's already got 3 taken. We don't really want him to lose any more equipment slots, so that's taken. Now one of them gets a fear, which means they have to move to an adjacent room. So we'll have Lucy flee to this room. Now, this guy has to activate his trigger zone, and that's going to activate these zombies because they're in this space. But they're not going to move because if they're in a space with a survivor, they just attack. So, unfortunately, they're going to attack here again. So they're going to roll 4 dice. He gets to roll 1, and he gets a success. So he will cancel this 2-hit dice. So he's got to take 1 hit. This would call reinforcements of zombies up to 2 tiles away, but there aren't any, so that doesn't matter. And then he's going to be entrapped. He's not too worried about that, because he does have this flashbang device. Okay, that's going to end the creature and zombie reaction phase. Now the fire, if there was a fire, it would move, but there's not. So now we regroup. Now we've got two survivors in one group, yellow and orange, and we've got purple in another group. So now we could determine if we want purple to go first, we could put him there and these guys over here. But I think we want them to move first so they can go over there and try to attack those zombies. Well, actually, before we did that, we should have done this, advance the event marker. There is no fire, so it's not going to move. Then we do the regroup phase, which is what I did just a second ago. This is also when I usually move people's markers back over, their action points. And then we do a camera check. This camera, it can see this whole room, so it does see a survivor. So because there's only one survivor in line of sight of that camera, we just have to roll one survivor dice and the terror dice. And if we roll a failure, then we have to activate the terror dice. But we didn't, so we don't have to worry about that. Now none of the other cameras can see anybody, so that's the only camera check we got to do. Okay, we do have to do zombie spawn now. So we'll roll for a zombie spawn. 2, 5. So that's 1, 2, all the way over here. Let's grab a token, put it there. It's not a line of sight of anybody, so we don't have to show it. Nobody has 2 virus tokens. Lucy does have 1, but she doesn't have 2, so there's no zombification. And now we go to the actions phase. So in the first box is Lucy and Jack, so they can act. So Jack, again, he's going to fire his gun. So he's going to spend one. Now his first action for a round is free, but he does have to spend ammo. And he gets to roll 3 dice. And he's going to fire at those zombies. That cancels 1 hit, but he does get 1 hit, so he kills 1 zombie. And that gives him an experience point. Now he could spend that for that upgrade because that one costs 4. And that just gives him an extra inventory slot. So he's not interested in that upgrade right now. Okay, so he's going to spend an action to attack again. Getting low on ammo. Dang, I keep rolling that failure. Alright, so I get 1 success. So I kill another zombie. Get another experience point. Not enough for this next upgrade. Alright, so we'll attack again. Use another ammo. See if we can't get rid of these zombies. Alright, no success. Alright, attack again. That's my last ammo. So this is the last shot he can take with his gun. 1 success. We'll use the failure to cancel that. So that gives him a success. Kills this zombie. Gives him another point. And if he does that upgrade, each aim icon Jack allocates to a success and an attack roll provides an extra hit, as well as providing extended range. So we'll say he's going to do that. He's going to spend his 6 experience and he'll activate that special power. So he has that skill from now on. Unfortunately, he's out of ammo, so if he wants to attack from now on, he just has to use his hands, which is 1 dice. But he's going to spend his last action point to move in here with Leo. So he's done, so he moves his marker down here. Now Lucy can go ahead and go. Of course, she could have gone intermixed with Jack, but she's going to spend an action point to move in there. And then she's going to spend an action point to swing her bat at that last zombie. Well, she has 2 knockbacks here. And the bat has a special power which 2 knockbacks can equal a kill. So she's going to assign those 2 knockbacks to kill this zombie. And she will get an experience point. And because there's no more zombies in this room, Leo is no longer entrapped. Okay, so she's going to spend an action point to, well, I was going to say to search, but I forgot. Leo searched that room already where he found that flashbang, so no more search. We should have put a cube there. No more searches can take place there. So she's going to spend an icon to move here, and then she'll spend her last, I said icon, she's going to spend her last action point to search. She's the only one in there. Since she's only rolling one dice, there's no point in rolling the terror dice because she can't get two of anything. But she's not successful, so that's a waste. So she's done. Now, even though Leo hasn't activated yet, because he's in the next group, now we have to do a creature and zombie activation. Now, because Lucy is in this space and she was in the first group, all of these spaces are the trigger spaces. So if she had stayed here, this zombie wouldn't have been activated, but it is because it's in her trigger zone. However, because this is a wall, he can't move here. So to try to move closer, he would have to go outside the trigger zone, which he can't do, so he'll just stay there. And this other zombie token is outside the trigger zone. So that's not going to be an issue. Now, Jack is here in this space, so his trigger zone is here, so there's nothing for him to activate. So that's done. That's all there is to that. There's no fire to spread. The fire would spread if there was one. But now we go on to the second group box, which is Leo, and now he can activate. So first thing he's going to do is he's going to use his first aid kit here. Now, unfortunately, that will lose him that icon. Maybe he'll keep that for now because he wants to have that icon to heal. I mean, to be able to unlock a door. So he'll keep that for now. He could use that flashbang if he was still entrapped, but he's not. So I think what he's going to do is he'll spend one to move, and he'll move up here. And now he'll search. He'll spend one to search, and because Lucy and Leo are in there, we roll 2 dice, so we do have to go ahead and roll the terror dice also. And we got no success. He's going to spend another one to search again. 2 successes. When it's successes, you do not, when you have 2 successes, you don't have to activate the terror dice. So he does get to draw 2 cards, equipment cards. He can only keep one, but he can pass the other one to Lucy. So he's going to keep this shotgun. It's only one hand, and his axe is only one hand, so he's good with 2 hands there. And he'll just pass this shotgun on to Lucy, who'll put that in her inventory. And now we have to put a successful search token. And because his shotgun has 4 ammo, we put 4 ammo tokens on it. And he still has 1 action left. He doesn't want to move out of that room, so he's just going to pass on his last action. Now again, we have zombie and creature reaction phase, but the only zombie token in his trigger spaces is this one, which cannot move closer without going out of the trigger zone, which it wouldn't do. So, and there's no fire to spread. So now we would just go again to the next upkeep phase, which would move down here and advance the darkness. So I think I'm going to stop there. This video has been really long already. I think you should have a pretty good idea from everything I've said and how it plays, how combat works. I don't want to spend much more time giving my opinion. Just of the play I had of it the other day, it seemed like it's pretty hard to win this game. But maybe I'm just not too good at knowing what I'm doing, and maybe with a few plays, it might be possible to win. I do think it's fun, but I think it's hard. So anyway, that's my experience from two plays of it. You know, 1 play a year ago and then 1 play the day before yesterday. So anyway, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.